Hi guys, welcome back, and for this practice problem today, we're going to be looking at two different projects. The cash flows are already given, and the initial investments are already given, and so is the cost of capital. And with that given information, we have to figure out what the NPV, IRR, payback period, discounted payback period, and the profitability index is for each respective project. And to do this as efficiently as possible, I'm going to compute every single one of those variables for each project for one project at a time. So we're going to start with project A, and we're going to put our cash flows. We're going to input the cash flows for year 0, which is negative 2,000, and then year 1 cash flows is 1,000. Year 2 cash flows is 800. Year 3 cash flows is 600. And just for posterity, year 4 cash flows is 0, so we'll enter in 0. Now with all that given, we go to NPV. Our cost of capital is 10% for this problem, so we're going to enter that in and compute NPV, and that's $21. And since the NPV is actually positive, we will go ahead and accept that project. Now to do IRR is very simple. Since we have all the cash flows inputted, we just go over to IRR and we hit compute, and it's already computed for us because I messed up in the last time I tried to record this video. So that's 10.65 for project A. And that's in terms of percent. And to figure out if we should accept a project or reject a project based on IRR, we compare it to the cost of capital. And since IRR is greater than the 10% cost of capital, we will accept the project. Now let's go into the payback period. We don't actually need the calculator for this one. Well, we do actually. I'm lied. So we're going to clear out all this. I messed up because I didn't have it all cleared beforehand. Screwed up my calculations, so make sure you do that. So the payback period is how long it takes for me to recover my initial investment from my cash flows. So the first year is 1,000, and then the second year is 800. So after the first 2 years, we know that we've recovered $1,800 of the $2,000 initial investment. The third year, we have to figure out, it's not the entirety of the third year, it's some percentage of the third year. So it's something of the third year, and we have to figure that out. And the way we do that is by taking what the first 2 years cash flows is, subtracting it by the initial investment of 2,000, let's make that positive, and dividing that number by the cash flows of year 3, which is 600. And we get 33% or 0.333. So that way we know that project A's payback period is 2.33 years. Meaning we'll recover our initial investment in 2.33 years for project A. Now, to do the discounted payback period is the same thing as the payback period, except we actually have to discount our cash flows for each year. So let me show you how we do that. So what we do is we take the 1,000, which is cash flow for year 1, and we're divided by 1 plus the cost of capital, which is 1.1. And since we're in year 1, this is technically to the first power. You'll see why that makes a difference for the next year's cash flows. And the cash flow for year 1 after discounted is $909, and we're gonna store that in 1. Then we take the 800 and divide it by 1.1 to the second power. Year 2, for every subsequent year, the power increases by 1 indefinitely, and that's 661, and we're gonna store that in 2. And then for the third year, since we're in a power greater than 2 and using the BA2 plus, we actually have to do one step in between before we can calculate what the discounted cash flow is. So what we have to do is we have to take 1.1, 1 plus cost capital, y to the x, and then input that y to x means you're raising it to a certain power. What power you want to raise it to? Raising it to the third power, enter, and we're going to store that into 7 because I like 7. Now we can take the 600, which is cash flow of year 3, and divide it by that value. And then we get $450 for year 3. And we're going to store that in 3. And now we're just going to figure out how long it takes for us to get our initial investment back, which is recall 1 plus recall 2 equals 1,570. And we know that year 3 discounted cash flow is around 600, so that'll put us over the $2,000 initial investment. So we're going to do the same thing we did before, is we're going to subtract this by the initial investment, 2,000, make it positive, and divide this by year 3 cash flows, which is already discounted right here. And we get 0.95 or 95%. So we know that the discounted payback period for project A is 2.95 years. I misspelled years, of course. All right, now we do the profitability index for project A. And what we do with the profitability index is we basically take the discounted cash flows we've already accounted for in project A, and we divide them by the initial investment. So I'm going to recall 1 plus recall 2 plus recall 3, which gives us 2021. You can kind of see why doing every single one of these for one project in its entirety first, and then the second one in its entirety makes it a lot easier because you don't have to keep re-inputting in values, because BA2 Plus can't store that many different kinds of cash flows or numerical values. All right, and we're going to take this and divide it by the initial investment, which is 2,000, and the profitability index is counted as 1.01. And the way we should determine if we accept or reject based on the profitability index in the way that we calculated it is if it's over 1, we accept the project. If it's under 1 or below 1, we reject the project. So since it's over 1, we accept. And then we're done with project A. So now we can go back and just do everything for project B. So we already know that it's going to be 2,000 for the cash flow. And year 1 is actually going to be 0. Year 2 is going to be 200. Year 3 is going to be 1,200. And year 4 is going to be 1,000. And the cost of capital is the same. Compute, and we get a negative $250. And since the NPV is negative, we're going to reject this project based on the NPV. Now we're just going to go back and, like we did before, IRR, recompute, 5.64%. And since the IRR is below the cost of capital, we're going to reject. Now let's compute the payback periods. Same way as we did before. Let me get this out of the way. We know year 1 is 0 cash flow. Year 2 is 200. Year 3 is 1,200. Messed that up. My bad. So we're going to do 200 plus 1,200. Add an extra 0 when I was supposed to. And we know year 4 is 1,000, so that means we're going to go over the initial investment. So we're going to subtract this by the initial investment. Make that positive. And then divide this by 1,000 with year 4 cash flow for project B. And we get 0.6 or 60%. So we know it's going to take us 3.6 years to get our money back based on the normal payback period. All right, sweet. Now we do the same thing that we did in project A, in project B, for the discounted payback period. So first things first, we have to discount the cash flows. And well, we know that year 0 is 0, so we don't need to discount it. But we have to remember that year 2 is 200, though this is the first time we have cash flows, we still have to divided by 1.1 to the second power. So 200 divided by 1.1 to the second power, 165, store that in 1. Now we have 1,200, but it's to the third power, so we have to actually do 1.1 y to the x, third power, and store that in 7. And now we can do the 1,200 divided by recall 7. It gets 901. We can store this in 2. We're doing the same thing for year 4 to the 4th power. Store in 7. And then we take the $1,000 divided by recall 7 again. 683, store it in 3. And now let's figure out how long it takes based on the discounted payback period. Recall 1 plus recall 2 equals to 1,000. But we know that the third year discounted cash flow is something like 600. So we wouldn't even meet the 2,000 initial investment. So we won't even recover a $2,000 our initial investment for project B. And to prove it, we'll just add this to the last year cash flow, and we 1,749. So outright, since we don't even recover our initial investment in the lifespan of the project, we can just literally reject this. because we'll never get the money back. So we just outright reject it based on the discounted payback period method. All right, now we move on to our profitability index for project B. Ooh. All right, there we go. So we know this is still a discounted cash flow. So we take this and we divide it by the initial investment, and we see that our profitability index is 8.87. And since it is below 1, we will reject it. All right, guys, that completes this practice problem. I hope you enjoyed. I hope it's not too long. And again, and always, I hope it's educational.